Anytime my wife feels like she's not protected by whatever I do, that's my job. That's why God gave her to me, is to make sure I have a covering and protection over her at all times. And if she feels like my words are crass, then I'll change my words.
Anytime my wife feels like she's not protected by whatever I do, that's my job. That's why God gave her to me, is to make sure I have a covering and protection over her at all times. And if she feels like my words are crash, then I'll take my words in a startling turn that nobody anticipated when Kimmi Scott formally filed for divorce from her husband Maurice Scott. It completely rocked the internet. However, what exactly led to the breakdown of the most stable couple on reality TV? Let's go back in time and discover how the cracks began to appear long before the documents were submitted. Kimmi and Maurice Scott were the couple that viewers admired the most when they were first introduced in love and marriage. Huntsville, however, after Kimmi received a breast cancer diagnosis, things began to change. Kimmi persevered through one of the most trying times in her life, displaying great strength and an unmistakable commitment to her family. Fans noticed a change online, but as Kimmi dug deeper into her health journey, something felt strange. Her social media posts began to focus more on healing, introspection, and personal development than on couples. Kimmy's page started to show someone rediscovering her own voice, her peace, and her identity outside of the marriage. The adorable couple's selfies and lighthearted videos with Maurice were no longer there, seeing it as a woman prioritizing herself. After years of giving to others, many fans encouraged her, although self-love was evident on the internet. Some people perceived a darker side to it. Kimmi and Maurice's emotional distance from one another wasn't just subtle, it was evident. If you watched recent seasons, their conversations started to sound less like heart-to-hearts and more like business meetings. Kimmi frequently expressed her emotions, openly describing times when she felt overburdened, abandoned, or unsupported. She just told it like it was. She didn't shout or attack. Maurice, on the other hand, seldom matched her enthusiasm. Rather than listening with compassion, he answered with deflections, facts, figures, and reasoning. One particularly noteworthy instance was when Kimmi calmly discussed the need for additional emotional and physical support at home while attempting to explain how much she was juggling. In response, Maurice stated that he understood, but went on to explain why his work came first. It what he didn't say, not what he said. There was only a wall, no vulnerability. Assurance. Maurice appeared more distant the more Kimmi opened up, even during therapy sessions. When most couples attempted to find common ground, Maurice remained reserved. He seemed to be more concerned with being correct than with being present, as evidenced by his icy communication style. The couple now appeared to be roommates filming a show together, which caught the attention of fans before Kimmi made a revelation that completely altered the course of events. Fans believed they were simply going through a difficult season. In one of the most vulnerable scenes on the show, Kimmi confessed on camera that she didn't feel like a priority in her marriage. Her words were delivered with sadness, as if she had reached her emotional breaking point rather than with annoyance or rage. She talked about how isolated she felt during marriage as well as during her medical treatment. She claimed that emotional intimacy was simply absent when she most needed it. Her voice remained steady. It was obvious from the weight of her words that she was sick of having to defend her value to someone who no longer saw it. Everything changed at that point. People started to wonder about his priorities, his support system, and whether he ever considered Kimmi to be his equal or merely a supporter in his narrative. The whispers from behind the scenes began to grow louder. Just as well believed the tension had reached its climax, things began to heat up off camera as well. Even though Kimmi and Maurice's issues were already evident on screen, quiet rumors quickly became louder, and soon after, rumors started to circulate about Maurice's extracurriculars activities. The topic of conversation was not merely business travel or working after hours. It was also about Maurice's leisure activities, and more significantly, the people he spent them with. People began to take a notice after a few posts on fan forums and social media claimed to have seen Maurice out late at land clubs, looking a little too at ease around women who were in Kimmi. Even though there was no confirmation at the time, fans noticed Kimmi pulling back on social media. At the same time as these rumors started, her posts were shifting. They were now only affirmations, health updates, and messages about independence instead of affectionate tributes or couple content. Nevertheless, Kimmi remained silent and didn't publicly express any denial or shade. Additionally, there are instances when silence speaks louder than words. Safer could she knew she just didn't have proof. That line stuck. One fan commented it supported the theory that many viewers had begun to hold, that Kimmi had been emotionally withdrawn for a long time prior to the divorce, not because she was prepared to leave, but rather because she had Given up on change, however, instead of retaliating with pride, Maurice broke down when the divorce filing was made public. Despite the emotional distance, Maurice reportedly believed that he and Kimmi were simply going through a difficult time. According to people close to the couple, Maurice didn't see it coming before learning that Kimmi had formally filed for divorce. He thought they could still work things out then. Panic struck, and according to insiders, Maurice began contacting her right away, sending text making, phone calls, and even unexpectedly knocking on her door. And he wasn't his typical cool-headed self. According to sources, he was raw, emotional, and utterly unprepared to lose her. According to reports, he pleaded with her not to proceed. He was crying, according to one source, and he said things like, "She's my whole world." I didn't think she would actually leave. Kimmi, however, was unmoved by the drama she had been pleading 4 years, and Maurice finally made the decision to come. He tried, but it was too late. He organized a special dinner for the two of them. Alone, he gave her a handwritten letter at the dinner, in which he expressed his regret for every instance in which he had ignored her and made her feel invisible. He even said he was prepared to attend couples therapy, which she had previously requested, but the had shunned. Was all Kimmi had hoped for years before, but her response was straightforward, silent and decisive: "I love you, but I need to love myself more now." It was a heavy line. A fresh voice joined the narrative just when it appeared that things couldn't get any worse during a difficult time in Maurice's marriage to Kimmi. A woman who came forward on a gossip blog and only identified herself as T for legal reasons said she had an emotional bond with him that lasted 4 months. Screenshots in green were uploaded, a blurry picture of Maurice and this woman at a lounge along with suggestive messages from old direct messages raised serious concerns. Despite the lack of explicit content, T claims that Maurice never disclosed his marital status to her, instead claiming to be emotionally unavailable and still working things out. Even though there was no hard evidence of a physical affair, he continued to pursue the connection because the message's emotional content was enough to incite outrage. When Kimmi was undergoing cancer treatment, fans couldn't believe Maurice could amuse another woman. Someone made a comment stating this man was out entertaining strangers while his wife was fighting for her life. He doesn't deserve her at all. Another stated Kimmi was carrying the weight of the world and still trying to save that marriage. The most devoted woman on that show was fumbled by Maurice in a brief post to his Instagram stories. Maurice attempted to quickly end the story by stating, "It's sad what people will do for attention. I've never disrespected my wife, and I stand on my integrity." However, shortly after the post was removed, which led to even more conjecture, Kimmi made a final silent gesture that seemed to say it all. Kimmi didn't post a statement or cause a stir-in. The days after the emotional fallout and growing tension, rather, she used a number of subdued gestures that conveyed more than words. Could she first unfollowed Maurice on Instagram, after which all of their joint photos vanished. Next came the completed digital blackout, during which Kimmi stopped posting any stories, tweets, or even her typical inspirational sayings. It felt like Kimmi was finally severing emotional ties, taking back her space, and refusing to allow the public to see her suffering any longer. Quietly, subtly, and powerfully, it wasn't just about ending a relationship. However, Kimmi had one last surprise at the mediation table. Despite the divorce proceeding, insiders claimed that Kimmi maintained her composure and was clear about her desires. When it came time to finalize the terms of the divorce, there was a clear demarcation of boundaries, rather than a dramatic courtroom stand. According to people close to the couple, Kimmi asked to stay in their shared house in order to maintain her peace and prevent moving while she recovered, in addition to being a practical request. Stability was more important than the property. Not only that, but Kimmi allegedly requested a confidentiality clause as well, something that would restrict Maurice's future public disclosures regarding their marriage or her health. She didn't want their story to be repeated in interviews or turned into yet another reality TV drama. She had finished contributing to the content. The most unexpected query, however, was rumors that Kimmi asked for Marika's appearance time on Love and Marriage Huntsville to be cut down in upcoming seasons, particularly in scenes that featured her. It was done to preserve her mental space, not to harm his reputation, to establish a clear separation between her recovery and the reality show that had previously occupied their time together. Maurice reportedly felt stunned, but he didn't resist, since he understood that the goal was preservation rather than punishment. It was obvious that this was a rebirth rather than retaliation. Kimmi is now choosing peace over performance and is going forward in a quiet, deliberate, and self-determined manner. Furthermore, Kimmi's silence continues to speak louder than words, even though Maurice still has to deal with the public's inquiries and criticism. While some fans have expressed their heartbreak that it came to this. Others have expressed their support, stating that they always felt she was keeping things together, behind the scenes and the actors. While some have publicly supported Kimmi, others remain notably silent, perhaps out of loyalty or fear of being drawn into it. Regardless, one thing is certain, Kimmi ultimately chose to return to herself rather than simply walk away from Maurice. The contest completed. Do you guys believe Kimmi did the right thing, or do you think Maurice deserves another chance? Anytime my wife feels like she's not protected by whatever I do, that's my job. That's why God gave her to me, is to make sure I have a covering and protection over her at all times. And if she feels like my words are crash, then I'll take my words in a startling turn that nobody anticipated when Kimmi Scott formally filed for divorce from her husband Maurice Scott. It completely rocked the internet. However, what exactly led to the breakdown of the most stable couple on reality TV? Let's